welcome back to the Whatnauts review show. I'm almost choking on my spit as I say that. Excuse me. Number 261. We're off to the races with a great start on this one. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, I hope you are not choking like I am.
I think my mouth is appropriately wet, neither too wet nor too dry, just the way you like it. Just the way a mouth is ordered.
Just the way Goldilocks would like it. Just right. How's your weekend been so far, Melissa?
It's been good. Did a lot of shopping, bought a lot of new lights for my room.
Yeah.
Now that I have this fancy new webcam with a greater angle on my room, you can see more of it. I've become very attentive to fine-tuning little things. So I bought a lot of silly little string lights.
That's cool. That's fun. I've had a pretty good weekend as well. We're continuing our Mission Impossible watch. That's our goal for today, is to finally watch Fallout, which I'm super excited for because it's so good. But yeah, we had a big storm last night. Woke up at like 3 a.m. with my phone being like, flash flood warning, hail the size of golf balls. Be careful out there, folks. Don't go outside. That's it. That's been my weekend. Good stuff, fun stuff, dangerous stuff. You know how it is. If you guys did not know, here on the Whatnauts review show, each week we have a different story to talk about. Could be a movie, a TV show, a comic book, an anime, a manga, an audio drama, all sorts of stuff. We read it, we watch it, we come back here and talk about it. This week on the show, we have The Many Deaths of Laila Starr. Yeah, this is a graphic novel that I have wanted to bring on to the show ever since I started reading it. I fell in love with this book almost instantly once I got that first issue in my hands. I own all the single issues. I have a trade paperback. I have this little nice hardcover deluxe edition that I'm holding up on camera right here. But The Many Deaths of Laila Starr by Ram V and Filipe Andrade. Published by Boom Studios. And yeah, I love this book a lot, so I really wanted to get this onto the show. I know I've probably said a million times on one of our podcasts, like, oh man, Melissa, this book, amazing. And she's just sitting there like, all right, Kyle, all right, sure.
Like,
sure, Jan.
You bring it to me. I'm not going to have time for this in my own spare time. You have to make this podcast content.
So I finally pitched it, and here we are, Melissa. You picked it. What did you think of The Many Deaths of Laila Starr?
I picked this one out of your other pitches because you had been raving about it so much. And it was only 5 issues long. It was considerably shorter than everything else you were pitching to me, which was a real draw. And I think it's going to be a real draw for anybody who's interested in the story. This is a quick read. It's a very effective story. It's something that is going to stick with you. It is going to have a long life in your mind, but you can read it in an evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't say that about a lot of stories.
I mean, you could read like a volume or two in an evening of some other comic, but usually those are ongoing series or stuff like that. And yeah, you can get the full story in about an hour, I think is how long it took me to read this. But
it's I want to say it is breezy in length, but not breezy in actual content. It's very introspective and whimsical and wistful, kind of melancholy, but kind of hopeful, very touching. There's a lot packed into this evening's worth of reading.
Absolutely. The art in this book is fantastic. I think that the art was one of the reasons I picked up the book in the first place, just to see all the incredible colors and stuff that is happening on each and every page. It's purples and reds and blues and golds and all sorts of stuff. It's fantastic. But yeah, I have a million and one good things to say about this book here. It's one that, oddly enough, like I'm a huge comic book fan. I have shelves and shelves and long boxes and long boxes off screen of stuff. But there are very few comics that have affected me on such an emotional level that, like, I'm still constantly thinking about them to this day. Like, somehow, like, you can cry at a movie, right? I'm a crier. I cry at movies sometimes. But sometimes even movies like that, I don't necessarily stick with me, or don't affect me on an emotional level to the degree to which something like this book has. And it's this book and I Kill Giants that are like the one that just like somehow get me or speak to me in a way that I don't necessarily really understand. And I find that fascinating. So this book, as the name kind of implies, deals a lot with the concept of death and just what it is, how you cope with it, how you react to it. And it's a subject that I feel like in my life, like I haven't really been around that much. It hasn't been a stranger, but like, I don't know, like I don't feel like I've truly experienced it firsthand. And so a book like this on that topic, I don't know why it affected me so much, but it did. And just like it stuck with me. Like you said, it will haunt you. But I've had a longer tail with this book than you have,
Yeah.
Melissa. So I'm kind of wondering, yeah, what stood out to you about this? What were some things that you liked, did not like? Just kind of more spoiler free thoughts. What was your experience like?
You're right. This is visually stunning. Like the way the characters move, the body language everybody has. It's such a languid book, but also such a dynamic book. Everybody's posture and movement. And there's a scene where when Lila first gets reincarnated on Earth and she's alive and she runs, just this big splash page of her running across the street with these big long limbs. Like there's so much dynamic movement canned in those pencil lines. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it's
And the
interesting for
stories,
sure.
it's like I said, there's a lot of emotion in it. I think it is ultimately a comforting story, but there's very sad details in it, and there's also kind of funny details in it. To talk about the plot, in someday in the future, immortality will be invented. Nobody's going to die anymore. So in this afterlife office tower, this sort of all godly being calls the goddess of death up to his office, we've made your position redundant. You're gonna have to go. And she shows up.
It's not even redundant. It's like your position is useless now.
Right. She shows up full Shiva goddess of death with the 6 arms and the blue skin and everything you've seen in the spiritual artwork, but she's wearing a business power suit, and with her 6 arms she's checking her hair and putting on lipstick in a mirror as she's riding an elevator up to the office. I don't know why I got called into this meeting. This is bad news.
Yeah.
And she's like, is this because taxes wanted my corner office? It's always been me and taxes, rivals for eternity.
Yeah, there's some good funny moments in there for sure. But yeah, they make her position basically not available, and so they, as retirement, they send her down to Earth to live out the rest of her existence as a mortal. And I guess that is a thing that the gods do. I think that's an interesting thing, because they call it a retirement, but it almost kind of feels like a punishment to some degree. But the fact that they're calling it a retirement means they must have agreed upon this, or this is something they desire, some kind of like understanding or experience that they want to have.
Or it's something neutral. It's like, we are reincarnating you down on Earth. You're completely out of our hands. What you do with your time is up to you. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. I don't know. Just scoot down to Earth with you.
And so the way that works is they end up taking over the body of someone who just recently died. So in a sense, it kind of makes it more like a near-death experience, because they die and then maybe a minute later come back. Basically, the god inhabiting them. So yeah, the god of death inhabits the body of this girl, Laila Starr, because death has figured out, has moved some things around and made a deal to get her reincarnated very close to where the child who will invent immortality, where he is born, so that she can go kill him. And that's kind of where the adventure begins. Is the story is about her run-ins with this person, and her kind of musings on that, whether she knows that she's running into him or not. And then also by the end of this book, kind of his realizations that he's met her multiple times. And it's a very affecting book. I think especially like if you've had someone in your life pass away recently, this might be an interesting book to pick up. I don't know how therapeutic it might be or how cathartic it might be, but I think it's one to just kind of contemplate how you're feeling about death, or where you are, if you've thought about it or not. But yeah, it's an interesting book. You want to add anything else to the plot wise? Did we miss it?
I don't know if we mentioned that it's all set in India. I think we start in Mumbai. We might, I know we go to Goa later. So we may be in multiple parts of India. But yeah, it's all story set in Indian culture and Indian spiritualism and in Hindu mythology and stuff like that. It's stuff I'm afraid to say that I don't know very well.
Agreed.
There's elements of this that felt familiar to me as a Westerner. Like, I have seen this before, but I don't know the full context and meaning behind it. But it's a nice place to visit. It's a nice thing to be immersed in, to feel like you are learning a little bit, even if you're missing the meaning and the context. It's a nice it felt good to visit another space, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Highly recommend this book. Please go check it out. But yeah, I think with that, we will take a quick break for housekeeping. And when we get back, we will start diving into the book a little bit more in depth. So with that, we will be right back. Here at the Whatnauts, we make multiple different shows, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. If you enjoy our shows, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to show your support. For just $1 a month, you can get early access to episodes, and at our $3 tier, a Patreon exclusive podcast, The Pilots Club. You can even get a shout out and thank you on most of our shows at the $5 tier. And if you're one of our patrons already, thank you so much. It means the world to us. You can find out more information on our website, thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in The Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch for video versions of the shows, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, we have merch. If you want to grab yourself a shirt or a hoodie or a mug or something else, head over to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. All right. We are back. Big shout out once again to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. It
Thank
means a
you.
ton. If you are at the $3 tier on our Patreon, you get the Pilots Club, in which this month we talked about a show from Netflix Spain called Cable Girls. It's a 1920s period piece. A bunch of women go work at a telecommunications company as switchboard operators. They all have their different reasons for being there, but in the pilot is also a heist. There's one person there who's there to steal stuff, and things get complicated real quickly. But yeah, that was an interesting one for us to talk about. Our first kind of soap opera that we've gotten to talk about on the Pilots Club. So it was interesting for sure. Right here on the review show, some cool things that we've been up to. This past week, we got to celebrate our national treasure, Nicolas Cage himself. We went back and we watched the movie adaptation, in which Nicolas Cage plays the screenwriter and director Charlie Kaufman and his fictional twin brother. So double the Nicolas Cage, the most Nicolas Cage we could get. So we had a lot of fun with that. Go check it out. That movie was fascinating. Over on the Reactor Core, we have spoiler casts up for The Flash, Asteroid City, as well as Secret Invasion. Though just a quick note on Secret Invasion, we were originally planning to do that week by week, but we have decided to group together the last handful of episodes. So 3 and 4 will be in one episode, and 5 and 6 will be in one together. So yeah, keep an eye out for all of that stuff over on the Reactor Core. And then over on the Captain's Log, not only did we recently have our annual trivia night, which is always a lot of fun, but this past week we got to hang out and talk about some fireworks. We talked about Nimona. We talked about this trailer to.
We talked about how people don't hang out and talk about fireworks. People will plan to go see fireworks. They'll watch fireworks together, and then at the end, it's like, well, good night, everybody. Exactly. The next day, you're not like, man, remember the red one? That was a good red one.
You mean the peony to the star ring explosion that they did there? There are names for all of this. Yes. I wish we knew what all of the combos were called. Like, is there a name for the combos of stuff? Interesting.
Oh my God. That's a fastball special right there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So lots of good stuff happening here at the Whatnauts. Please go check it all out. But that is kind of about it for housekeeping right now. So we will get into spoilers for The Many Deaths of Laila Starr. All right. Melissa, I think we need to start right here at the top, this giant office tower of the gods.
You know I love it.
Yeah, I knew you would like this concept. It's unfortunately not in the book very long, really only the first handful of pages. But what did you think of this? The book starts in this real kind of hectic, chaotic place because it's scenes of this office building, the scene of Darius's mother in the taxi on the way to the hospital to give birth, and then Laila before she originally dies at this party. What did you think about this kind of like a more hectic start to the book?
We do have a narrator, sort of third person narrator, saying like, these are all of the pieces on the board for our story. These are how all of them are going to come together. Yeah. And the office tower full of gods, even if I don't know the gods well, like some of them might, like I might recognize some of the imagery, but I don't know all their names or what they do.
Sure.
But they look so striking. like the Laila Starr's boss has like 3 heads, like the living tribunal. There's somebody with like fire for hair. Like they're really striking and memorable. And
Mhm.
the whole concept of this secret unseen force operates just like a mundane office is something like a concept we're all familiar with from other stories. Everything from Dead Like Me to, I don't know, Inside Out or something. So you
Yeah.
don't need to spend a lot of time there. It's like visually so clean and clear. Like you get it. You'd like to spend more time there, but the book gives you exactly what you need before it gets going into the cycle of death.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first things that stood out to me is just how poetic the narration is. That is, I think, something that really took me right away because is usually in comics when you have like a narration box, especially in like superhero comics, it is just kind of the inner thoughts of the character. Maybe they're speaking to themselves more like Peter Parker, Spider-Man, or it's the like crime noir detective, Batman stuff. But this, there was something about it that was, I mean, we learn later on that most of this book is narrated by the god of life. I think his
Mm.
name was, oh god, I forget his name.
Yeah, she calls him like prawn or something. Like she's familiar with him, of course, life and death. So she's got like a nickname for him.
Right. Let me see if I can find his name here in a sec. But yeah, it's mostly him narrating. And he just has this kind of very slow poetic pace to describing things. There is this calm steadiness to the way he speaks. That is really, really interesting because the like reflecting on the book, yeah, I think the how hectic the book kind of starts in what it's depicting is kind of reminiscent of life. When you think of life as a whole, it is hectic. It is like just things are happening all over the place. But then yeah, he has this kind of calm reflection to his voice there, that it is in a sense this idea that despite everything, life will go on, and so he just continues at this steady pace, that I really really enjoyed. Yeah, she calls him, oh here we go, Prana, I believe is his name, Pranah. That's how it's spelled. So yeah, um, but I really really enjoyed that you get this like juxtaposition of like two things that I think you could easily equate with
Mm.
life, just that the hecticness and the
Yes.
craziness of everything that's happening, but then this idea that it just kind of keeps on. And that's
Hmm.
also really interesting considering how the book ends here with kind of that sentiment, is that it just at the end of the day, life just kind of keeps going on. But yeah, that was neat.
Hmm. I
But
like
yeah,
that every time Prana reincarnates her, he's like, no, I can't keep doing this. Eventually, the head office is going to catch on. They're going to get mad at me. I'm not as invulnerable, to the office culture as you think I am. But it
yeah,
keeps happening. I think that's very charming. And I love the conceit that every time Layla gets reincarnated, huge irregular amounts of time have gone by. Like the
yeah,
first time she gets brought back to life after she's first reincarnated and then immediately gets hit by a car, it's like, it's been 8 years. It's been 12 years. It's been 20 years. It's been 38 years.
right, yeah, um, yeah. He so I think this is because we aren't necessarily familiar with this pantheon of gods,
Hmm.
but do you know, or did you get a sense that like what was the relationship between life and death here? It to me, it almost seemed like brother and sister. Like they had some kind of familial role. Because I never felt like there was anything super untoward or like there's not really any sexual stuff happening between them. That's not what this book is. The closest thing we get to that is she wakes up and he's already like he's already there looking at her, and she's just like, have you been watching me sleep? But I think just the way they talk, the way he is kind of bending the rules for her, the way she calls him by a nickname instead of his full name, just to me read like some kind of familial relationship.
Yeah. Or maybe like the bond you have after you've been colleagues with somebody shoulder to shoulder for, in this case, millennia, eons.
Right. Yeah. They had an interesting relationship because, he was kind of poking fun at her. He's like, again? You died again? Like, come on. We can't keep meeting like this.
It is very funny how many times she dies in so many different ways.
Yeah. Each time it's a different way. This first issue I think is a lot of fun. Because I mean, what's fascinating about this book is that each issue is also just so different from the next one. Like this first one, she gets reincarnated. The body of Laila Starr fell or jumped. It's not entirely clear out of this window from this party. Maybe she died of boredom, or this guy hitting on her was just so boring that she was just like, anything else, please. But she gets taken to the hospital. She's declared dead. She's in their like morgue down in the basement for like 20 minutes. And that's when she finally wakes up again with the goddess of death inside her. And there's this little ghost kid just hanging out in the hospital.
I like her.
And they like immediately just kind of go on an adventure together. Laila tries to make it to the infirmary where all the babies are. She picks up Darius, and he is just this like blob of a baby.
He's so cute. I was talking about earlier, the like physical body language of everybody in the comic, where if they're moving, they're really moving, and if they're not, they're really not. And he's just like this like little goblin with these tiny legs.
This blob.
Right.
And she's contemplating on like how to kill this baby, but the ghost, I think her name was Moon.
Yes.
She's just sitting there like, I don't really understand what you're doing here or why you're here. That one's name is Darius, and she's sitting there holding this baby like, what? Why would you tell me its name? Like, now, she's like, well, if you know its name, you can't kill it. She's just like,
which is true.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like that. First off, I really liked Moon. I was disappointed when the next issue was like so many years later, and in every
we don't get to see her again.
Yeah. Every issue, Lila's got a new sort of spiritual companion. She's got Moon. She's got the crow. She's got like the spirit of the Chinese temple. You don't see anybody again. So that's it for Moon. But I do like that Lila's like, I'm going to kill the inventor of immortality so I can get my job back. When is he alive? He's been alive for 3 hours. I'm going to get him. I don't know when he invents this
Now's
thing.
my chance.
I got to get him as soon as possible. He'll be helpless. And Moon's like, you can't kill a baby. The baby has like a name and a family. He's here with all the other babies. I like that it works. I like that Lila's like, Now that I hold him and I look in his eyes and I know what his name is, and we are here in the same physical space, and he's a living being in my living being hands, and we're not just like two abstract concepts out here in the universe,
Yeah.
I am chickening out. I can't do it.
It's interesting because the way she responds is still, I feel like how she would respond as the god of death. She's still just like, so who cares if he has a family? But also, I think internally, without even saying it, this is her, like, she's now no longer a god. She is immortal. She is a mortal, not immortal.
Mm.
And so killing something has a different weight to it, right? And she's kind of internally wrestling with that of like, what will that mean for me then as a mortal? And especially now that I know it has a name and has a family, like, what does that say about me, right? So it's like there's this interesting, like, what? Why would you tell me its name? Like, what's happening? um, but yeah, she runs out immediately once she's discovered to be alive. And what I love about these chase scenes here is that she's really not in the camera of these chase scenes. You see her like just off camera, like maybe you see her foot or like maybe you see her arm. It's like a stationary camera and she just ran past you, but you have this like arm that's blurry and things being knocked over behind her. And then, yeah, she runs out the side entrance and just immediately gets hit by a bus, which is kind of comedic, like in its own right? She's making an escape and then just boom.
Yes. And then the book talks about how everybody at the hospital talks about her. Like the girl who died came back to life for 20 minutes and then immediately died again.
God, yeah, that's kind of wild. But yeah, then that's when we kind of get the info that, okay, the god of life has now revived her. And they are on Earth at some location and has been like, it's now been 8 years since you got hit by a bus. I don't know if just the logistics, the bureaucracy of resurrecting someone takes that long or takes a certain amount, or the way,
or maybe it has to do with how she died. Yeah, like if she gets smushed by a house, that's going to take longer than getting smushed by a car. It isn't explained, but I do like the device of it. That every time she dies, it is a long but non-specific amount of time that could take for her to come back.
It's an interesting thought for sure. What about this? The fact that it happens multiple times, the god of life, he's doing it on purpose. Like it's not the higher ups telling him to do this, but it feels like he's putting his fingers kind of in pies that they maybe shouldn't belong in, and he's kind of twisting things or manipulating things to his own way of doing things, which is an interesting thought that I don't think I really thought about until just now. Did you get any kind of read like that there might be something he's trying to do instead?
We know that he isn't technically supposed to bring her back to life, but he does as a favor to her because they are old friends. It seems like he's sort of watching over her corporeal form in these in-between times. She just sleeps on his couch, I guess, for 16 years. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah, we don't know specifically why, but I do like the device. There's something extra haunting about blink and you miss it, massive time gaps. Massive gaps in time and space. Like really, at least for me, hit some like deep childhood fear. It's like the dreams you have where you're getting ready to go somewhere and you're like, okay, let me go into my closet and get my shoes. And you getting your shoes takes like the entire day and you missed whatever event you were going to.
the clerk's like, I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Right. It's that sort of deep-seated dream terror that this book
Right.
touches upon.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I can even see, because I think there's one point where Prawn says something along the lines of life doesn't really have meaning without
Mm,
death. So
yeah.
I'm wondering if he's also kind of manipulating things in a sense to teach Darius a lesson or something like that.
Maybe she
Um,
is designed to come to be awakened to encounter Darius at specific times in Darius's life.
yeah. Because I mean, that could be the thing of like, if you view the afterlife as this giant office building corporation kind of thing, right? It could be that they got rid of a number of positions, let people go, but then they kind of have to see how the dust settles after that, and then they're like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, you know what? Maybe we also don't need life. We don't need the god of life here. Maybe we can let him go. I wonder if he's kind of having those thoughts of like, oh, well, if they let her go, it's only a matter of time until they realize that
Hmm.
I'm not really necessary, or something like that. It's an interesting thought. I hadn't I really considered that aspect there. But yeah, I like his character a lot, because he's just this real suave looking dude. Always has a nice suit
Mhm.
on.
Yeah.
He's like drinking tea, has a bunch of jewelry on, stuff like that. But yeah, so issue 2, then Darius is now 8 years old. Um,
Mhm.
I really enjoyed this one, the whole like storytelling aspect of this servant that Darius's family has when he's young, and he is also just this like larger than life figure, this like
Yes.
mythological figure
Yes.
with again with these like extremely long limbs that just make him, seem like some kind of creature from some fairy tale. um and it's an interesting story to then see how attached Darius got to this person, even though he didn't really have a relationship with the family per se beyond employer
Mhm.
employee.
Yes.
And when Darius learns that he dies, he like breaks all the rule. He escapes and like runs away from
Yeah.
home just to go witness the funeral.
Mhm.
Which is an interesting thing, because I don't like, when you think about kids running away, you probably don't expect them to be
Right.
like, I want to go to a funeral. Um,
Exactly.
just let me live my life, mom. I want to go to a funeral. Um,
Right.
yeah, it's Darius's first like, it's not the relationship that I feel like maybe more Westerners are usually
Mhm.
attuned to, where it's like a pet, right? Where it's like, oh, my
Oh.
hamster died, or like
Uh-huh.
my dog passed away, or something. Like, it is an actual person that he finds himself so attached to.
Mhm.
Um, and he has this like deep seated care for him. Like,
Yeah.
he even just questioning like, why can't we give him some of the fruit that
Mhm.
like he harvests for us? He just doesn't understand, and in that way is just like, but no, let me go give him some regardless.
Yeah.
um
Mhm.
yeah,
It,
I really like saying that aspect of Darius, that he really cares for people.
he does. He's so sweet. And the man's life, I forget the man's name, but he's such a mystery to Darius. Like, who is he? Where does he come from? Why is he so tall?
Where does he come
You know,
from?
why
Where
do
does he
we
go?
Right. Why can't he come inside? Why does he bathe in the river? Why do we give him this food but not this other food? Like when he leaves, where does he go? Like he doesn't know anything about this man's life. He just knows his character. He doesn't know the facts of him, but he knows like emotionally who he is, what this man means to him, that this man is good and is strong and is kind. Uh and so, like, it's just from one mystery into another. When he dies, like, Darius still doesn't have answers to any of his earlier questions. And now he's got a much
Hmm.
bigger question. Yeah, what is death? I don't like it. How do I stop it?
Yeah, because even with him coming into contact with the concept of death, even before that, he has this kind of revelation that, like, he's living his life somewhere else, and I don't get to see that. Like, there is a chance that I won't even get to see him again, even if he is alive. There is this like
Yeah.
concept of like being here and then not being here, like just that kind of separation, right? And I think it's through that he is then introduced to the concept of death. It's no longer, oh, he's alive but he's just somewhere else and you can't see him. It's
Mm-hmm.
he no longer exists. um
Mm-hmm.
and he's struggling to understand what exactly that means. And so yeah, wants to run away to go see his funeral to try and understand all of that. And meanwhile, we get Laila Starr sitting at like a cafe or on a roof somewhere and talking to a raven, who has I think the raven at one point makes a joke and says, "Wow, I've never seen a talking human before." um,
I think it's like a crow spirit. Like the crows are supposed to
Something
be
like that. Yeah.
the farriers of the dead. Uh yeah, and so when Lila realizes that the crow is huge and is carrying her around, like, oh, did I die again? Is that what this is?
She's just like, ah, shoot. um, yeah, but it's like she's there in the city and she's witnessing this funeral, not knowing who the funeral is for, or the significance it plays in Darius's life. And then she runs into this small kid, which she doesn't
Mm,
really know is Darius at her first. Um, and she just kind of has this brief interaction, this brief talk with him, just kind of about how he's feeling and what's on his mind. And then yeah, he runs off into the crowd of the funeral, and that's where she loses him. And then like finally sees him off in the distance because he hears his family calling his
mm.
name, being like, Darius. And she's just like, wait, that was him? Like, oh my God. Like I just ran into him and had no idea. Like I could have killed him then. Why didn't I? Right.
Mhm.
But yeah, she's also standing out in at sea and then kind of gets pulled in by the spirits that are in the
Mm,
water, or as some might explain, like a riptide in the
yeah.
undercurrent. And she drowns. And that's when she's just like, ah, shit, I died again.
Yeah. Oh, this
Damn
is
it.
gonna keep happening, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um,
And the next time she wakes up, Darius is now like 20 years
mhm.
old,
In
and she
college.
encounters him at a party. And she's been living up a high party life. She's drinking, drugs, sex, dancing all night, stuff like that. And she encounters him at a party. Again, I think it takes her a little while to realize who he is. And he tells the story about how his girlfriend just broke up with him and his best friend just died. And the death of the best friend is one of the more haunting things in this book, where the friend is like works in video and it's like, oh yeah, helped shoot a commercial here at this abandoned factory a couple weeks ago. The place is still abandoned. I still know how to get in. this is our cool new hangout spot. Like
Yeah.
they're young enough that they're like, we need a cool secret clubhouse, and it's an abandoned pillow factory. Just so wild. You don't think about there being a whole factory just for pillows. And it's
Down
got this big
feathers
sign
in a
on the
giant pit.
walls.
Yeah.
Right, all the feathers are still there. They just jump into the feather pile. And there's a sign on the wall that says, we don't just make pillows, we make dreams. Which is so haunting in this like sad, gray, empty place. And the three of them, him and his best friend and this girl, hang out in this abandoned pillow factory as these
To smoke
hopeful
and
young
drink
people.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, and his friend is like the coolest guy, and Darius wishes he was like as cool as his friend. And what if the girl likes him and doesn't like her? It doesn't likes the friend but doesn't like Darius. And later you find out that the friend died when there was some political uprising and like some protest and all of this chaos. The pillow factory got lit on fire while he was in there. And of course, it's full of very flammable material, so it goes right up. Like when you learn that that's how he died, you were expecting like, oh, there was an accident. Like he jumped into what he thought was a pile of feathers, but it wasn't. Or the pile of feathers was hiding like a sharp, heavy piece of machinery under there. You're expecting that. Like he falls, there's an accident, or maybe like somebody else knows, hey, there's an abandoned pillow factory. Let's do crime there. And he gets shot or something. To have him die in like somebody lights the building on fire, not even knowing that he's in there. It's so impersonal. Even having like a criminal come across him and shoot him feels more personal than that. There's another human in the equation.
Well,
He's
that's
just
the thing is
nothing. He's zero. He's collateral damage. He's invisible. It's such a careless death. Like of all the ways to go out.
Darius isn't exactly sure how it happened. He knows he was in the building and the building got lit on fire, but he's not sure if it was just like an errant Molotov cocktail that got in or saw something.
Oh, yeah.
Or if someone saw him and they chased him back in there and just in the chaos thought he was someone who shouldn't be there or something. I don't know. There's just this uncertainty of what exactly happened. And yeah, you're right. It does make it for this very impersonal and just very impersonal and just another mystery in Darius's life of this like lack of understanding. And yeah, it haunts him, and it kind of leaves him half the person that he was, which is basically what he says. And his girlfriend, as a result, like doesn't really, it is like she's kind of moved on, and he has not, and so she's just like, dude, you're stuck here, and I'm not gonna wait. Like I can't. And her kind of last words to him as she breaks up with him and then leaves the party is, "You'll thank me later," which we don't get any kind of return to that, really. I think he mentions her once later on in issue 4, I think. But yeah, like he's just kind of stuck and lost in life and not really sure what to do with himself at this point. And yeah, Laila has this interaction with him as they're on the balcony of this apartment building where the party is. They're both smoking and talking and stuff like that. And it's not until after she had died that like life was like, that was him. And she was just like, what? Really? Again? Come on.
Like we shared a cigarette. That whole, I mentioned that every issue kind of has like a spiritual companion. Like it's the ghost girl, it's the crow. In this one, it's narrated by a cigarette. The cigarette they are smoking.
Issue 3 was the issue. I mean, like I was already sold on the book, but issue 3, realizing that this third issue is narrated from, or like is told from the perspective of a cigarette, blew my mind, and I was just like, I love this book. This book is incredible. It's so good. Like, it's so, it feels creative. It's a nice change of pace from the narration of Prawn, who has been, it goes back to him narrating it, but still, it was this nice kind of change of pace. Also, it felt, and I'm 1,000% mean this as a compliment. It felt like not only was this Darius's years as a college kid, but it feels like the kind of like collegey, like it,
Yeah.
like a college kid was like, but what if I wrote my entire essay from the perspective of a cigarette, right? And it works. It like, I feel like it works. I don't know, but it spoke to me in such a creative way that I was just like, this is cool. I like this. But it also still holds that like poetic language that the God of Life has, because the narration starts with something along the lines of like, my life started with a kiss and a spark. Right, and it's just like that, like, hooked me on sentence 1. Okay, we're off to a great start. But I think even the metaphor of Darius kind of contemplating his life and the cigarette, realizing that he's kind of the same as Darius, that he's just kind of sitting there while the cigarette burns and burns and burns, and then this big chunk of him just kind of fell off when his best friend died. I thought that was interesting. Yeah, issue 3 was fantastic. I liked that one a lot. The colors in that one especially are also really neat, because in the like hazy smoke party, it does start to get a little more neon. There's like lime greens and purples and stuff like that, whereas the other ones have that in there as an artistic interpretation, but it is more realistic in a way, if that makes sense. Like, this feels almost like they are bathed in all these like LED neon lights and stuff like that, and it just has like, the characters are long and wavy and elongated because they're all high and drunk and stuff like that. And then it was a fire that also killed Laila in this one, an apartment fire caused by a cigarette. So she, like, that one I feel like is the most nonchalant, right? Just like low key death too. Just like, it, like, and she's the only one that died. Everyone else made it out of the apartment except for her. How did you read that? Because I think part of me wants to say she just didn't care. But I'm wondering if the other part of me is that she was is thinking that she was trying to get everyone out.
I don't know. Every other death is an accident. Like, she doesn't realize she is in mortal peril. She doesn't realize she has died. Something just happens to her.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Then maybe it was Prana, who's like, I know I keep bringing you back to life. I know, like, you're my pal. I got to take care of these actual living people and make sure they continue to live. I'm life. Yeah. That's my number one job.
Exactly.
If you die, I'll get you later. It's fine.
Yeah. We'll get you next time. And then we open up with issue 4. Now I think like 20 something years after that. And he is, I think, Darius now is living in a house. He's kind of this recluse, kind of this shut in. He's already had a storied career as a
Mm.
scientist, very successful, and is kind of known in the neighborhood as this like giver of life. They bring him these like hurt
No,
things,
there's
these
the
dead
one in
things.
between. There's the
Oh
one in
yes,
between where like his wife has just died. She catches up to him in adulthood, when he's like 35 or 40 or something, and goes to his house and sees all these newspapers and like accolades and awards, and he's this major like scientist and philanthropist and things like that. And then she learns that his wife died. And I think this is when he realizes, I know you. I have seen you before. You must be following me. And like she sort of confesses, I'm death. I came here to kill you. I couldn't kill you when you were a baby. I keep trying though.
yeah, yeah,
Like they sort of have a meeting, and he's angry at her for taking his wife. Like, why her? She didn't deserve this. Our child didn't deserve to be motherless. What is the meaning behind everything? It's
yeah.
that one.
Well, he's also noticed that it's every time someone in his life
Oh
that he cares
yeah.
about passes away, which she did not realize or notice, that like shortly after these people pass away, he has an encounter with her. And she's sitting there like, no, I'm here for you. I didn't know about the other people. I don't know who they are. And he's just, like, he has it so set in his mind that you're the one taking these people from me. And in a sense, he wouldn't have been wrong if she still had her job.
Mm.
But that's not necessarily true nowadays, and so they're both kind of at odds here of like, no, I'm here for you, and he's like, no, you're here for my wife, like you already like. And so their meeting doesn't really go well. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
abruptly
Mm.
ends, and she ends up leaving his house as he gets super mad. But yeah, it's interesting to me that he has such a different perspective on it. I was reading another comic last night. It was House of Slaughter Volume 2. It's a little spin-off book from Something is Killing the Children. Fantastic series. We've covered the first couple volumes of
Mm.
that here on the review show. But in this book in particular, there's a character who, I'm not sure exactly how to describe him. He's sent on this mission to investigate something that's been happening around a bunch of people getting injuries to their eyes. And of course, like, the people start to talk and the kids start to be like, it was a monster, like all of this stuff. And as that spreads, the idea in that universe is then the monsters become real. But this character in particular is often someone who does not speculate on things. The way he's very much about facts. He has a good memory, so he like remembers all these case files and stuff, and he won't exaggerate or speculate on what this could be or what this might mean. He just says, no, it's this thing
Mm-hmm.
there. And that kind of like when he realizes that's why he's there, that they don't want him to speculate on the stuff, that he just is supposed to kind of give this non-answer to the public of just being like, nope, not a monster,
Mm-hmm.
it's this thing, right? He kind of realizes that there are different ways that people interpret the same situations, and people kind of look into things in different ways. And that's why when I look up at the stars, I just see stars. and
Hmm.
someone else sees a constellation that is a bear. Um, and I feel like that's kind of what's happening here in this book is Darius is looking into the situation, is looking into what happened. Why do I always see you? Why do I always have an encounter with you? And why do you look the same? Right?
Yeah.
Like you haven't aged a day. Um, and he's just kind of lost, so he's looking for answers. Um, is kind of what I got out of that, and I think it's out of anger then that he starts to look for immortality. Right? He's just like, I'm gonna beat you. Like you won't be coming around here anymore. This is the last that I will see of you. Is that how you read this whole situation here in issue 4?
Yeah, he is kind of catching on to her game, and you can see that this is really where the idea to solve mortality comes from. That from here on out is where he's going to spend. Maybe he's already started something like that. We can see that he's already a scientist of some kind, but this is where he's like, no, for real. Nobody around me dies anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So he kind of does it out of spite. And then it's how does she die in this fourth
This
one?
is the one where she finds
Oh,
the
she's
a sort of spirit
the
in a
temple.
Chinese temple. And there's a story about how once, like decades ago, this big new factory or mill or something opened, and all these workers came in from China to work there. And there was this little boy whose father came to work at that mill or whatever it was, and the family also opened up, I think, like a little shrine. And as time has gone on, he keeps the shrine open and he's there every day. He just leaves to like go get lunch or something, and then he comes back, and the spirit of the shrine is like, I know his patterns, I know how he works, almost like a pet waiting for its human to come home. Like I know his habits. He's supposed to be home by now. And there's this terrible, terrible storm that day. And the man's very old anyway. I think what he dies of is old age. He like goes out for his
Hmm.
lunch and he dies. And later the storm causes all this flash flooding and it destroys this temple, like the last Chinese temple in the city left over from that generation of Chinese immigrants to that part of India. And it's a sort of end of an era, not just end of a life, but end of this like cultural thumbtack in the world, like end of this one touchstone for and it was for seems like nobody came to the temple anymore. Like the people it was there for weren't in
Yeah,
the area anymore. New people didn't come in. So it was just this one old man continuing what he thought must have been his life's work, but he's like, this is what I know to do. This is what I think is important. Even if it's only for me, I'm going to keep doing it. And then he dies, and the temple is coincidentally, fatefully destroyed the same day. And that's how Lila dies. Is the temple collapses on top of her.
yeah. How come you think we got that story rather than like the story of his wife? Um, of Darius's wife, because this temple really has nothing to do with Darius. He's not Chinese. He doesn't believe in any kind of Chinese gods or anything like that that we know of. Um, the character that dies in this again had like doesn't really touch or influence Darius's life in any real way. This one seems to be more for Laila herself.
Yeah. I guess it's a connection with other cultures, with other senses of gods and of the afterlife and of the spiritual world. She's got it kind of I think the spirit she's talking to doesn't have like a name or really a specific
I don't think so.
counterpart in any sort of specific religion. Uh it doesn't feel, the way she's can be like an avatar of Shiva. Like the spirit she's talking to is in a specific avatar in that way. It's sort of a broadening of learning we sort of get removed. You're right. Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with Darius. It's about like a different culture, somebody Darius like never met, has no idea of. But you do wonder if you, you can imagine Darius's house is like covered with these newspapers. It's these stories of
Hmm.
his acclaims and of the death of his wife. You can imagine him seeing this story in the newspaper. Man dies and his temple is washed away that same day. And that might give further credence to him
Mm.
saying, we can't have death anymore. Look at how in tuned life is to everything around us. The man dies, the building dies. If I can keep people alive, I can keep so many more things alive as well.
Yeah, like even this idea of this guy died kind of unceremoniously, and even though
Mm-hmm.
the town knew him and seemed to like him, um, it seemed like very quickly this guy was going to be forgotten, just in the kind of
Yeah.
the way that life just kind of moves on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm wondering, yeah, if that is maybe a spark for Darius to be like, hey, if I can solve immortality, if I can invent that, then one, this guy won't have to die. He can keep this culture alive. But then two, like he won't go unremembered. Even though the thing
Mm-hmm.
might not have been some grand, like I invented immortality, but just I kept this one shrine
Yes.
alive and clean. Like that, I think is maybe important to him in a way that he didn't realize that Darius thought that this was important to him, in a sense that even if it's something small that you do, like you have, like you're doing an important thing here. um who knows, maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
what he thought. But
But yeah, it's
then,
the next chapter, the
yeah, the
final
next
chapter,
chapter, he
where
is
now Darius, he's a very old
continues, yeah.
man. Yeah, and he's estranged from his son. He lives in this like little beach house in Goa, which is this like beachy resort area of India that a lot of people vacation to. And there's been like some big beach festival, and these kids are helping to clean up after the beach festival, and they see like a little puppy who was like almost squished under like a a music bandstand or something. And the family's like, that little guy's not going to make it. He's so little, he's so thin, his leg is broken. I'm sorry, honey. But the girl's like, no, I know a guy. I've heard of this guy. If he can do anything, he can do this. And she walks like 6 miles by herself to take the little puppy to old Darius. And Darius has like a house full of animals. Like that's what he's
Hmm.
come to do. Is he sort of moved his focus away from people and like the super science of immortality to the more attainable, uh, the less uh, incredible in terms of magic or science. Just like I work really, really hard at healing specific sick little animals people bring me. People know that they can bring the animal to me. I'll do everything possible I can within my own little beach house.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm surrounded by all these dogs and cats and stuff now as a testament to what I've done.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of a recluse, except he is known for healing
Hmm.
these animals and stuff like that. And what we learn is when Lila shows up is he invites her in. They kind of immediately apologize to one another.
Hmm.
He's like, I was mean to you last time you showed up. And it's a different look for Darius because of how angry he was at her last time.
Yeah.
And he has a different perspective on life than he did, however, 30 something years ago, that he last saw her. And what we come to learn is that he did invent immortality, he solved it, he figured it out, but before kind of publishing his work or anything like that, he decided to just put it in a shoebox and stuff it in his closet. And I
Hmm.
think by that point, after seeing that the worker at his house pass away, seeing his best friend die, seeing his wife pass away, like finally by being surrounded by all of this death, I think he gained a new perspective on the importance of it in the grand scheme of things, right? And how if things lived forever, they would just kind of go into obscurity in a way that
Hmm.
death tends to memorialize things in a weird
Yeah.
way. Even though we just talked about like the guy at the temple might not be remembered in the near future, but in the odd times that you do talk about him, or he does come up, right? He would be the like, yeah, and that guy is the one that did that. He kept that temple
Yeah.
alive. Um,
Or you think about the original Lila Starr, the girl who died, came back to life and then immediately died again.
right?
She is immortalized now for that story.
Yeah. And it's kind of the memories you have of people that immortalize them rather than any kind of science or magic or who knows what. It is how you remember them, how fondly you remember them, and there is a purpose to passing on and not existing anymore, and then living in people's memories and stuff like that. It's deep, it's introspective, but yeah, kind of at the end here, there is this like hopeful feeling as
Yeah.
Darius also then reveals that he's about to die. I
Mm.
forget if they said he was like dying of cancer or something like that.
He was
Um,
also just quite old.
but yeah, his son finally comes back. He gets to reconcile with his son, um and do that, but he kind of reveals to Lila that he is kind of content, that he's a-okay, but the last thing he wants her to do is look at the box in which he hid the immortality stuff, and she gets to look at that. What did you think of him just kind of tossing it in this shoebox and just being like, well, that'll go in the closet?
It's kind of hopeful that it's the opposite of the Jurassic Park problem,
Okay.
where Jeff Goldblum was like, you were so worried about whether or not you could that you didn't think about whether or not you should. This is
Mm-hmm.
somebody who could, who did, and thought about whether or not they should. Like,
Yeah.
there's something positive in proving, like, oh, if we wanted to solve immortality, we could do it. This guy did it. By himself, he did it. And then he decided, I don't think it's that important. I keep it away as a secret, as a personal sense of pride. And he doesn't even keep it to, he keeps the knowledge to himself, but he doesn't keep the benefit to himself. He purposefully does not make himself immortal. He allows
Mm-hmm.
himself to die.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an important thing to note here. There was a particular
Mhm.
set of panels here in the last issue. Um, there's also there's also one when she finally gets to explain the whole thing of like, I almost killed you as a baby, but I couldn't. And then he just busts out laughing. There's this panel of him being like, like, you idiot. That's why you're here. But there's a particular set of panels in this final issue that I think are particularly strong, and it's Darius talking about what he's learned about life, and it's three moments in which he's reflecting on his life. And there's a panel of him on the shoulders of the worker at his house, and
Yeah.
the summer that he just had a great time. There's a a panel of, and now I forget if that's I guess that's his best friend, or no, that's the girlfriend. I don't remember. And then there's the third panel of him hugging his son when his son is young, just after he lost his wife. But the narration here says, "This is what I have learned in all my years, Laila Starr. We are strong, all mortal things. We live because we truly desire to. Do you understand? Each heartbeat, every breath is a rejection of death." He's like, "I already did it, you see," and that's when he reveals that, like, "I already made it. It worked. I just shoved it in my closet instead." He's like, he's come to this conclusion that humans are resilient. They will fight to survive. Like, he's not really the one fixing these living things, right? He's not really the one saving this puppy. The puppy himself is fighting for life here, and that is this kind of rejection of death that he wanted so much when he met her that third time, and was just like, "I'll get you." He sees something else. He has this new perspective, and I think that's really beautiful. Like a really interesting way to look at life and its meaning. That life in and of itself is a kind of immortality. Like, and that's not to say, I don't think he's trying to say, like, we were born to die, and so every little breath we take is like one more step into, like, I don't think it's that. But yeah, there's I think he's recognizing a beauty and a meaning and a purpose that he did not see before. So yeah, then this book ends in like a real hopeful place,
Yeah.
which is interesting for sure. And then we kind of get to see what's inside the box. Kind of, she opens it, but it's kind of like, it looks like a journal and then some kind of wrapped package that's in there. But Laila, at the end of the day, also decides to do nothing with that, and she just kind of sends it on its own little funeral out into the ocean.
Yeah.
And she says, "Who's to say exactly how things end? If there is one thing we have learned, it is that life's endings are bereft of answers." And so we don't really get any kind of explanation on what this immortality is, or she also doesn't get any kind of explanation on what it is or how it works.
Yeah.
Darius never really got the mystery of the house servant and who he was exactly, or if his best friend had a crush on his girlfriend too, or if he had a crush on him, which was also kind of implied, of like, maybe he just wanted to hang out with me and didn't want her to intervene and stuff like that too. So yeah, there's just, life has a bunch of mysteries, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. That is one
Sometimes
of
you won't know.
the things you come away with from this book. You don't know things, but that's what life is. Like, coming to terms with life is mysteries, including the mystery of why do we die? What's on the other side? Is there any purpose to it? Like, you have
Yeah,
to make your own purpose. You have to make your own meaning.
indeed. Yeah, I cannot recommend this book enough. The art is stellar. It is fantastic. This hardcover edition that I have here is really cool. It has a bunch of stuff in the back. It has some stuff that was originally published in Panel X Panel, or Panel by Panel. I'm not sure how you pronounce the magazine. But it is a comics publication that does a bunch of literary analysis It's a phenomenal Eisner Award-winning magazine, but it has some ancillary material here in the back that was originally published in issue number 47 of that magazine back in 2021 on breaking story, how to write for an artist, how to think visually when writing. It has some stuff from the artist Filipe Andrade on his artistic method on the book. Stuff like that, how to bring the characters to life and coloring the book, as well as some stuff that the letterers did on just how to make this book feel more alive. And stuff like that. Some interview stuff, and then it has some sketch work. It has a cover gallery. It's a really, really nice hard cover that I think you guys should all check out. But one of the reasons that I also wanted to pitch this book now, when I did, is because this same creative team, Ramvi and Filipe Andrade, is working on another book called Rare Flavors. Flavors is spelled out the British way with the U. And it is, I'm not sure exactly what it's about. I think you can tell by the name it is centered around food. Personally, I'm getting the vibe it's like rich people, food culture, trying weird and exotic things, and I don't know why I'm getting this. I'm only speculating, but like maybe trying human meat or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. That could be completely wrong.
This is what you can imagine, right? If there's any mysterious food story, you're like, are they going to eat somebody?
Do they
question
eat
on all of our minds.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think be on the lookout for that book too, because I think that'll be really, really cool. Do you have any other kind of final thoughts while I pull up Bingo here?
Bingo.
All right, let's get to Bingo. Review show Bingo. All kinds of entertainment tropes, comic book tropes, movie tropes. I got one. We got a ghost. We got ourselves a good old ghost.
Finally.
Thank you, Moon. Or Mun. I don't know how to pronounce that. Let's see. Arted to death. No. Didn't realize my own strength. No. Cat and mouse game. No, I don't think so. I think that's it. I just got a ghost. That's good the only thing that I got here.
I have 8 bingos now.
Ugh. I'm still behind. I don't know how much I have.
I think you have 3.
Exactly. Fuck. Good Lord. Anyways, that is our quick update for Bingo. Melissa is crushing it right now, and I am far behind. But yeah, recommendations. Melissa, for people who enjoyed this, what else might you recommend?
I want to mention first that one of my favorite film essayists on YouTube is Patrick H. Willems. And he just did a video about a month ago. It's a big, meaty, like 80-minute video called I Went to India to Learn About Bollywood. And him and one of his friends and creative partners is from India. And so this friend took him on a tour of various spots. And he picked like 6 or so important movies in like Bollywood history and went to a location tied with each one, like where it was filmed. Or, you know, he goes to the theater that's still playing DDLJ every day after like 30 years. It's a really fun educational video. And I bring this up just because that was the only reason why I knew where Goa was when this book went to Goa. Like, I just learned about that place.
Cool. Good stuff. Mm-hmm.
And I want to recommend a multimedia web story that you could very approximately categorize as a web comic, 17,776, or What Football Will Look Like in the Future. This is a story hosted on a sports blog called SB Nation, And it is a piece of creative fiction by author John Bois. And it is about a future in the year 17,776 where these satellites that have been launched into space, one of them finally sort of like awakens into sentience and encounters his two like older sibling satellites who were launched before him and are like more have been like awake longer. And anyway, it's these three satellites that are watching Earth from space.
Mhm.
And we live in this future now where humans have stopped aging and stopped dying and stopped being born. Like humanity, it's just froze one day.
Yeah.
And like they solved all these world problems. There are no social ills. There's not like war or poverty or hunger or anything like that. So it's just about what humanity does with their time when life is infinite and there are no major problems to solve. And so they play football. They play American football and they play it on a huge scale. Like the people who are players now, because they don't have needs, like they've evolved past human needs. Like they don't need like sleep or food or like medicine in the same way.
Right.
So they will play football across like massive, massive stretches of land. Like, okay, this goalpost is in Wyoming and this goalpost is in Indiana. Go. And these people just run across the country. And games of football will last years. Like, this is the world sport now, is this like infinite mega football. Everybody watches it. Everybody is so into it. There's all these weird case studies and like crazy specific games, like weird rules they had to invent. And it's just these satellites looking down at what humanity is now and what this game is now. And it's about the purpose of why do we play games? Why do we like sports? Why do we like entertainment? Why do we like these stories?
Yeah.
And, you know, what does it mean when humans are immortal? How do they fill their time? How do they make meaning? It's funny, it's strange, and it is so touching. I cry at this weird multimedia football satellite comic. I cry at it. There's things in there that have haunted me. It's so beautiful. We did a Patreon bonus episode talking about this years ago.
We did, yeah. Yeah. Very high concept, but yeah, surprisingly adept at analyzing life and humans and why we do what we do. There is some like oddly beautifully poetic stuff in that I don't think you would expect with such a strange concept here.
They talk about how there's this one light bulb in like a fire station in San Francisco or something that's like this weird fluke miracle light bulb that just keeps burning. It hasn't burnt out like way past the natural lifespan of a light bulb. It's been going for like decades now. And how like when a football accidentally hits it, humanity mourns because that is the last thing that has died in like recent memory. It's it's so poignant, this silly football comic.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. I have a few recommendations that I can mention here. So if you want more stuff written by Ram V, he's become one of my favorite writers in the past couple of years. He wrote along with James Tinian IV, wrote Justice League Dark for quite a while. And when it was happening, was one of DC Comics' best, like secretly best books. I don't know why more people weren't reading it, but it was incredible. It was so good. And if you want more of the like dark magic side of DC Comics, Ram V has his fingers kind of in that. He also recently did a Swamp Thing mini series. And I've also mentioned on the show before his graphic novel Blue and Green. I believe that's the name. Yeah. And it is this kind of psychological horror about this guy trying to find out more information on this musician that he only like has like a picture of or something like that. I'm not explaining it too great, but it is this kind of like music-based horror story in which this guy is contemplating legacy and memory and death, and it's a really really interesting read for sure. But then I also mentioned at the start of the podcast I Kill Giants, which is not written by Ram V, but is another book that I think affected me on an emotional level, kind of unlike any other comics have. My mom is a cancer survivor, and she got it when I was really, really young. And so I never really understood exactly everything it meant and what it was. And I never really knew how to express that or deal with those emotions. And that book just destroyed me. It was like, that is exactly how I feel. I have all these feelings, all these thoughts, but I don't know how to express them or put them into words or deal with them in a certain way. And that book is kind of about that. There's a young girl who seems to be retreating into some kind of fantasy that these giants are coming to the town and that she's the only one that can kill them. And it is there's kind of a mystery of like, are these giants real or not here? Is this actually a fantasy or is it not? And as that mystery unravels, you kind of learn the real reasons behind all of this stuff and what's happening. And it's a really interesting one for sure. The last thing that I would like to recommend is Osamu Tezuka's Buddha, his manga. Buddha. It is about the life and times of the titular Buddha. What's interesting to me is that this book starts before he's even born, and it kind of tells the life and times around him rather than solely focusing on him as the main character. It brings in adventures of people around him and stuff like that, and how they were affected by him. And it is just this big, grand story about life and death, and there's plenty of adventure and comedy, and it's an epic tale that I think has some really really interesting musings just on what is life, how should we live our lives, is it worth following teachings like this where we kind of give up all our possessions or stuff like that. So yeah, I would recommend those things. Great stuff.
Nice.
Indeed. Melissa, it's your turn to do pitches.
Yes.
For this next week.
Kyle, inside each of us, there are two wolves. There is Barbie and there is Oppenheimer.
Yeah, okay.
And I was telling you that I was thinking of doing doing pitches based on Oppenheimer. Right?
I have on a pink shirt underneath a black sweatshirt. Yeah.
I was going to do a series of pitches based on Oppenheimer, but I couldn't make it to 3. And I'm like, you can't leave Barbie out like that. That's not fair. So this is a binary pitch this week. I have 2 movies. One is very much in the Oppenheimer vein, and the other one is very much in the Barbie vein.
Which do I feed?
Make your choice. Yes. Which wolf do you feed? Pitch number 1. In the Oppenheimer vein, I have the movie The Current War. This is a movie about the rise of electricity, and it follows Edison, Westinghouse, and Tesla as they fight for who's going to be like the godfather of electricity, who's really got it down. It's AC versus DC. It's about selling your type of electricity to different markets and who's going to get the bigger market and like, who's the first electricity to power an electric chair and how does that make your reputation look? Stuff
Yeah.
like that. We've a good cast here. Benedict Cumberbatch is Edison. Michael Shannon is Westinghouse. Nicholas Hoult is Tesla. Tom Holland is a guy who works for Edison. Just also in the mix. I don't think he's a major historical figure. Right. Tom Holland is boy. I really like this movie. I caught this on like when I had a trial of Stars for something.
Interesting.
What I found was the director's cut. And then when I found this DVD at the store, also labeled the director's cut. So I have no idea what the status of the theatrical cut is. I don't know if the director's cut is completely like overwritten it, but this movie is a really interesting look at the specific place in history with this thing we all know, the electricity. Like how much work it took to actually get it into our homes, how much strife that was, how much rivalry that was.
You will learn the shocking truth.
Truly. And it's filmed in a really beautiful way. There's interesting uses of sort of atypical presentation, like triptychs of frames up there on the screen. It's an interesting one. I'd really like to watch it again. So a movie about the perils of invention, the current war.
Okay.
And
good stuff.
On the other hand, the other wolf you may feed is a tale of bright, happy, family-friendly, nostalgic characters encountering the harshness of the real world. It is the Brady Bunch movie.
Okay, the Brady Bunch movie.
This is a film from the 90s that is a spoof on the Brady Bunch. It's like, what if the actual Brady Bunch? None of the original actors are here. Some of them appear in cameos, but it's Gary Cole and Shelley Long are the parents here. They are Mike and Carol Brady. What if the Brady Bunch existed exactly the way you remember them from the 70s sitcom, but they just live now in like the harsh MTV 90s? Like you just picked them up and dropped them there, and they are not changing. How does the world adapt to the Bradys? What are their interactions like? What do their neighbors think? What do the other kids at school think?
Interesting.
And the main plot is they have just 1 week to come up with $20,000 in back taxes, or they'll lose their house to their scheming neighbor, Michael McKeon. And then it's got like we visit all the classic things. Marsha gets her nose hit by a football. Right. This is, you said it yourself earlier today. Sure, Jan. This is what it's from. Like I don't think it's from this movie. I don't think that's like the adaptation of the original series. People are not quoting the original Brady Bunch. They are quoting this secondhand 90s spoof, the Brady Bunch movie.
That's funny.
And for the listeners, I have held up physical discs for both of these. These are both Melissa favorites. This is like, I loved this movie to death when I was like 8 years old. I haven't seen it in a long time though.
Oh man.
Right.
Part of me wants to go with current war because I know you were on this. Like, I want to do movies about like science conflict or just like science in general, right? But the Brady Bunch also feels like a good one considering we just read the Flintstone comics not too long ago. Which is a favorite of mine. And I think those would go hand in hand. Oh man. Oh Lord. I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go with the Brady Bunch on this one.
Okay.
I think that sounds fun, and I think it's such a juxtaposition to what we just read here. This it has its moments of comedy, but the many deaths of Laila Starr, pretty serious.
Also, this is I thought I should Google it since you don't own a disc of this. I'm like, wait, where can Kyle actually see it? This is for free on Pluto.
Okay.
So enjoy.
Indeed.
The Brady
indeed.
Bunch movie, a childhood classic. This is an interesting time to watch it, I think, on the lead up to Barbie. And yeah, coming off of things like the Flintstones. I think this may be the time in the Whatnauts history when we visit the Brady Bunch.
We finally made it here. The thing you've all been waiting for. The Brady Bunch.
Tune in next year when we watch that weird Beverly Hillbillies movie from the 90s too. There's a whole slew of these.
Oh, Lord. Good stuff. Well, yeah, we will wrap things up there. Next week, we will watch the Brady Bunch movie. Be on the lookout for that. Get excited about that. Yeah, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WilkyWit. That's WilkywIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities.
There you go. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer. And if you'd like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter. We're also on Threads now at the Whatnauts Official. You can find me at Yo Kyle Springer there too. If you're watching this on YouTube, we got some more videos for you right over there on that side of the screen. Go help us out and click on one of those. Go watch something else. But we hope you enjoyed this one. This has been number 261 of the Whatnauts Review Show. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.